Between wing and water. This is Lieutenant Charles Carroll Tyler, Flight 19 reaching FT-74. I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn. This is FT-74. Please identify your coordinates so someone can help you, the radio sang back. After a long moment of static, the controller tried again. FT-28, this is FT-74. What is your trouble? I triggered the switch and sucked in air, not knowing how to continue. I looked down at my controls and decided that I would start there. Both of my compasses are out, and I am trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I craned my neck to peek out the smoky glass. The outside was just as smoky, since there was a determined shroud of fog following me. I did catch fragmented hints of civilization below me, coming in and out like jigsaw pieces. I am over land, but it is broken, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale. I did seem sure of myself over the radio, but in reality I was not positive about my location over the Florida Keys. It would make sense, since I had been headed west. Yet that was when my compass had been fully functional. I tapped the plastic cover and watched as the needle whirred crazily, stalling and then speeding up again. I wondered where I had gone wrong. I was entirely familiar with the Avenger torpedo aircraft. I'd had more than the necessary flying hours to call myself an experienced pilot. It was a simple mission, to say the least. I was to instruct a total of 4 students in a simulated course from Fort Lauderdale east to a small strip of islands called Hen and Chicken Shoals, then south to the Bahamas, and then west back to the Florida coast, in a perfect triangle demonstration. I was only there as an instructor to watch over my trainees and make sure they weren't falling behind. Their main lesson was to learn the art of dead reckoning, which involved picking out their exact location based on their last recorded time interval. So, if they had left the Keys at 13:30 exactly, they should have known that another 20 minutes would bring them 67 miles due east. Everything had gone as planned until the return trip, where a strange mist, spreading as far up and down as I could see, fell upon us and forced us farther and farther apart. I began to lose radio communication between the students that were supposed to be at my nose and tail. The only ones I could still speak with were on my left and right wings, and they were experiencing the same sort of phenomena. Their radios were going in and out, and their compasses were faltering, and not just the heading indicator, which was the common electric compass. The magnetic compasses, completely free of any power sources, were unreliable as well. Put the sun on your port wing and fly north up the coast, the radio explained. Did you hear that? Ron? Carl? Anyone? I was addressing my last string of trainees, hoping to God that I wasn't alone in this. Roger, Lieutenant. The sun at port wing, and then north. That was Ron, on my left side. Carl, do you copy? Only dead air. I cursed under my breath and squirmed inside my seat. Well, if anyone can hear me but cannot transmit back, find the sun and line it up with your left wing. Fly straight. The sun was just about the only certainty inside that silver sheen. I quickly made my maneuver and prayed that my students were all in concert alongside me. A few minutes later, rough turbulence rocked my plane and more of my instruments admitted to failure. My altimeter was next to go, which was there to show me my altitude above sea level. And then my airspeed indicator malfunctioned and presented me a nonsense code of zeros and ones. Now, no way of telling how fast I was flying through the air, which would be quite important in landing the plane. I tried my best to broadcast this information to the Fort Lauderdale Naval Base, but the responses kept coming back in unrecognizable jumbles. I looked back out and could see absolutely nothing to familiarize myself with. There was no land or sea. The world as I knew it was one complete whiteout. I could still see the sun's pinpoint of light behind my left wing, and I checked my watch. We should have been at the coast by now, and 17 minutes had passed since my last radio transmission with my pupil. Then Ron's voice came through, clear and precise. Damn it, if we could just fly west, we could get home. Head west, for God's sakes. Negative. I am heading this show. Do not redirect west. We are under strict instruction from the base. The base? Have you? From the... Recently? They're not listening. You're not listening, FT-32. Be anything. Don't you see this isn't? Repeat that, FT-32. Ron, do you copy? And that was the last I ever heard from him. Close to 1730, rain speckled my windshield, and off-coast winds sent my wings off balance. It took more than my remaining strength to keep them aligned with my altitude indicator, which served as my virtual horizon, giving me a good idea of how parallel I was with the Earth. This was my last instrument properly functioning inside my cockpit, save for my fuel gauge. I was running on empty. There was maybe an hour left of flight time, and I needed to act fast. We had started the flight exercise a little after 1340 that afternoon, and we were now 2 hours over schedule. I finally decided to take Ron's suggestion into practice. I thumbed the radio and tried to pronounce my words confidently and without strain. We'll fly 270 degrees west until landfall or running out of gas. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When you reach less than 10 gallons, start to descend. I had completely lost track of the sun. The silver mist had taken on a grayish hue, dark and unyielding. The rain had let up, but not the wind. With each turbulent rip, I would yelp helplessly into my mask, straining my every muscle in my arms and legs to keep the control wheel steady. I was up and out of my seat belts forgotten, throwing all my weight back and away from the controls, praying desperately under my breath. Ahead of me, the clouds were taking on a new shape. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but a good-sized bowl was beginning to form, collapsing in on itself like a narrow funnel. The funnel evolved into a tunnel, braided with tongues of slick electric bolts, reaching unseen into the darkest of pits. I was headed straight into it, and I could do nothing. I was too busy trying to keep my nose level. I couldn't even begin to turn left or right, not when I didn't know where the sky ended and where the sea began. As I entered the churning tunnel, I lost all control of my muscles. I plopped back into my seat and my arms were dormant at my sides. My chin dropped to my chest and my eyes clouded. All I could do was watch as some invisible force supported my wings and carried me safely through the bright lightning flashes. I must have lost consciousness, because when I shook myself awake, I was being spit out of the tunnel, and my hands were able to grasp the wheel once again. The mist had dispersed. I could clearly see the ocean below me, and an incoming stretch of land, emerging out of the sea like a jagged hulk of rock. The sun was positioned directly in front of me, which was strange because it had just been at my back, and it should have been ready to set close to the horizon. What was even stranger was that the sun was burning red. I checked my watch and saw that it was 1 p.m. My instruments were all working normally, except for the compass, whose needle sat perfectly steady, only it was pointing south. I switched on the radio and a voice burst through. Tuesday, December 8th, 1945. KPPL radio. Still no news on the lost Flight 19 that went missing from Fort Lauderdale Naval Base on December 5th of last week. They are thought to have vanished without a trace in a strange coastal mist somewhere in the Atlantic. Of the 5 planes that left that afternoon, none have been found. If you get a chance to pick up the most recent issue of Argosy magazine, you'll find a story on Flight 19. The title of the article is The Bermuda Triangle, the Devil's Gateway, and I'm sure it'll bring a chill down your spine. Then the broadcast faded out into static. I landed my bomber on a stretch of desert land, too arid and bare to belong to the Keys, or any of the islands for that matter. There was no civilization anywhere to be seen, no buildings, vehicles, or radio towers of any kind. It was only vast desert as far as the eye could see. I stripped off my mask, forgetting the radio completely. I was too afraid of hearing more shaking newscasts preaching to the masses of my very disappearance some 3 days ago. I fell out of my fuselage in a state of disorientation, crawling hand over knee across wasted sand toward the sea, back toward the sea.